Jackie Schafer, thank you so much for joining me. You are the CEO of this amazing company called Clearbrief. Tell us more about Clearbrief and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is fun. So yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Clearbrief, and I am a litigator. That's how I spent most of my career in law, and I started in big law at Paul Weiss, as a litigation associate. But most of my practice was for government as an assistant attorney general, doing appeals, complex litigation, and so I've just lived the pain point that Clearbrief is solving many, many, many times, which is, you enjoy the creative, um, you know, uh, analytical aspects of writing a brief, but then there's this terrible crunch period right when you need to file that involves, a mix of sort of actual attorney review and a bunch of, administrative type work. And so what Clearbrief does is it's in Microsoft Word, and it's sort of like bringing AI into Word so that while you're writing, you can do things like select a sentence, and Clearbrief will pop up suggestions for, like, here's a page from the discovery that you've uploaded into Clearbrief that would support this sentence in Word. And here's a list of pages. That feature really is thrilling to litigators because who among us has not like realized, the day before something's due, you're like, oh my God, there's just 20 places where I push the burden onto my future self. And I was like, add fact site, find a fact site was later. And, keyword searches don't cut it. A lot of times you're like, I know somebody said this idea in the transcript, but I'm just not finding it. And Clearbrief is able, because it's using AI, it doesn't need to be an exact keyword. It knows how to pull up the most relevant ideas from the factual documents. So that's huge. It also can help you spot mistakes. It color codes the scoring on the different things you've already cited, and just pulls it up for you so you can look and say, oh, wait a minute, Clearbrief is flagging this, and yeah, this was the wrong statute, or this was and then at the end of the process, you can do a table of authorities, like using AI in just a few clicks, and share a cloud-based version of not only your Word doc, but all of the sources with clients and with the court. And so that's probably the thing that I'm most bullish on for 2022 is we're seeing a pretty quick, expansion of adoption of Clearbrief by courts and by government agencies, um, not only by the lawyers who are preparing the documents, but the court deals with the same type of challenge when they're reviewing these documents. So that was a long explanation, but that's what Clearbrief does.
You presented at a startup pitch event last September, and I saw a demo of Clearbrief, and I think I wrote to you immediately afterwards, and I said, this is the most impressive use of NLP I've seen in any legal tech in a very, very long time.
Thank
Um,
you so much.
no, I genuinely mean it. Like, it's pretty rare that I would look at a piece of tech and go, oh, I don't know exactly how that's working, but that is so impressive. And there was that moment for me when I saw yours, and your description of it is, I think, really quite fascinating, because there's several points there which come out from there, and I was jotting notes down as you were talking. The first is your reference to pain points, and how important that is when you have a startup or a scale up.
Especially for startup founders, the idea of pain points, and I think I've had a lot of learning about that since starting the company, where one of the first things, if you talk with someone who does like user research for a living, it's just a very different type of interview that you have with users than a lawyer would have during a deposition or something, for example, where although maybe the truly skilled you know, litigators are good at sort of leaving things open-ended and letting people kind of hang themselves. That's the deposition kind of perspective. But yeah, I mean, with user research, you're not going to really understand the pain point if you go in with too many leading questions and you're too, um, opinionated about, you know, how the problem should be solved, basically. And so that I think it's a strength that I deeply understand the work that our users do, but I had to sort of learn how to hold myself back a little bit more when I was talking to people, and that's what really I think made the difference in helping us, you know, refine our focus and also make like the product improvements that we've done over the past year.
Mm.
And read between the lines, of what's annoying them or, what they love and that kind of
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and so I found that to be I know it's maybe a cliche, but it's just I was reminded by a number of my advisors, like, early on, it's like, you need to always be talking to customers, and
Yes.
just because you hire other people on the team to, help with sales or, help with customer success, like, I need to also be in those conversations as the product leader. I need to really, um give myself a lot of opportunities
Mm.
to, ask questions sort of because sometimes, if someone just sends an email, they're like, "Oh, how do I do this?" And you could answer it and give them that immediate answer, but, you'll learn a lot more if you can get them on a call and then help figure out, like, well,
Yes.
why wasn't it intuitive to them what to do next or
Yes.
that kind of thing.
And that's super fascinating. The words, "Why was it not intuitive to them?" Um, you obviously do a lot of research, do a lot of conversations with customers to find out what exactly they're looking for. Um, and there's this, I don't know if you've seen this, there's I forget the lady's name at Google. She gave this talk about microwaves. Have you seen that?
No, mm-mm.
Oh, she's wonderful. I'll send you a link afterwards.
Love me a
She
microwave.
is No, it's genuinely a really good talk. She is an AI researcher or an AI lead at Google, and what she was talking about is, as developers, as product owners, we care how the microwave works. We care that there's this wave, there's this power inlet, outlet, etc. But as customers, they just want their food heated up.
I don't know if things are sort of changing, but, early when I started Clearbrief in 2020, like, actually right before the pandemic hit, um, when I would kind of talk to lawyers about AI, that seemed like it kind of turned them off. Like, people are very wary of AI and
Yep.
AI sort of replacing lawyers. So, I actually just found it easier to just talk about it more as, like, a tech product, and I
Yeah.
do not emphasize the AI.
Yep.
Now I do think there's more education and understanding of, like, okay, yeah, AI is not going to replace lawyers anytime soon, but
If
it does
ever, right?
do cool stuff, and, um, so I think just I kind of think of it as, we're a SaaS product with a
Yep.
sprinkle of AI in the right places,
Yep.
and that seems like it, is less intimidating to people.
Yeah, I think so. There's been a shift in the marketplace, right? I think people were disillusioned by the early wave of AI that was in the legal space, and there was a lot of inflated marketing. And now people have toned it back. It's a lot more grounded, which I am very thankful for. Um, and more and more, I'm seeing the really advanced technologies become sort of invisible as a sort of part of the workflow, but it doesn't, scream and shout and say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm super powerful and amazing." It just
Mhm.
does the job and help lawyers. And you mentioned at the start, you've got yours inside of Microsoft Word, which has been a sort of trend in the last 3 or 4 years. Tell us more about how you designed it. Tell us more about, what is it that you want the user experience to be like?
Yeah. So I really, because I come from, like I said, most of my career is in government. I am very practical when it comes to how you can change the world. Like, I've worked on projects. I also was in house for a national, like, $3 billion nonprofit that was working to try to change the child welfare system. So I've just like been a part of a lot of different, kind of like policy initiatives to try to change things, improve things. And my, like, biggest insight is that it's the most boring, unsexy things that actually change the world and that actually make a difference. And so I initially did think, "Oh, wouldn't it be so cool if we could, like, have a totally new platform and, like, build our own word processor that's modern?" And it's like, well, everyone it's like 99% of lawyers
Yeah.
and, like, something ridiculous like that, and courts and judges all use Word,
Yep.
and even, companies that their in-house legal teams, maybe they don't even use Word, they still have Word, they all
Mm.
have it. So that's really not something to be sneezed at, that you have
Yeah.
kind of a captive audience of people who, when they sit down to write, they're working in Word, and anytime they have to use a different platform, it's costing them in terms of their focus. And because the act of writing is, like this masterpiece, you're pulling together things from all these different, like, diverse places and sources and ideas. And um, I wanted to sort of create something that could make that, the cost of finding what you need less, so
Yep.
that most of your effort and energy, is your concentration is not broken. You can really focus on the writing and the craft of writing. And yeah, again, like, it's like Microsoft Word. The fact of finding sources and citations is so important when it comes to the
Mm.
outcomes of these cases, and when it comes to the workload of litigators and
Mm.
courts. Um, so that's where the unsexy area of citations is how I think, AI can really be helpful. It's also, where natural language processing is really
Yeah.
perfect for this type of knowledge work. So, um, I'm really excited about, again, like, it's wonderful to just hear from the users now. And we have like a Slack channel that's like the wall of love, where we just put
Oh,
kind of the things that our customers say when we're on a call with them and stuff, like, my mind is blown, like, and just to hear that excitement, it literally happens every call now. And so, um, and when I've talked with other, um, salespeople, and some of the sales folks on our team come from other legal tech, uh,
mhm.
areas, and they're like, yeah, I've never experienced that before. Like, lawyers are pretty, um, not easily impressed, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, that's really gratifying, that we've taken something that's very dry and stressful for people, and we've brought kind of this AI magic to it, so
Yeah.
they can work more efficiently. They can actually, win their case. Because if you can find that killer piece of evidence, like, that is
Yep.
what's going to persuade.
Yep. Yep. It's okay. So first of all, it is not an unsexy area. It's just very dressed down. Um,
Well
I
done.
mean, I think it's like a really cool area. And the more I work with NLP, the more I work with this sort of like um, machine learning and AI space, the more I realize there's a big difference between what is successful and what is not successful in terms of the adoption. And it's stuff that actually fits in a person's workflow. Like if
Mhm.
if you can insert something into the way they work today and they just go, right, pick it up, off they run, that is so much easier than trying to say, okay, it's a brand new thing, go train a model, go do X, go do Y, go do Z, and then you're going to get the benefit 3 months later. So I love the way you go about and create this inside the ecosystem where lawyers are working today.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Mhm.
and something that you said at the very beginning of this, which made me think was a very interesting point, was um, there's a big difference between litigators and transactional lawyers. Um, and what we do on our side of the fence, we look after transactional lawyers, and on what you do, you're looking after litigators. But there's a lot of parallels as well. What would you say are the key things that litigators are looking for? And also, what do you think are the key things that are different between litigators and transactional lawyers?
In terms of what they're looking for in a product, or like in.
Yeah, in terms of what they're looking for for something that helps them, not necessarily a product, but something
Mm.
that actually helps them solve their day-to-day needs.
Yeah, and so, like, when I was in-house at the nonprofit, I did, like, a high volume of, contracts and
Mm,
agreements and, contract negotiation. So I do have some sense of, like, what that pain is like too.
mm,
Um, I always found that on the transactional side, yeah, it was more about, the relationships in the deals, and
mhm.
trying to figure out, okay, like, I'm not the person who's, actually owning the project or whatever that I'm negotiating, or the
Yep.
deal. So, um, but I yet have to, like, foresee all of the pitfalls and and risks
Yep.
and challenges. And um, so yeah, I think like to me there is so much complexity that the transactional lawyers face in trying to sort of see the future and anticipate.
Mm,
Um, and when I think about the work that litigators are doing when they sit down to Microsoft Word, it's more about um, telling a story.
mhm.
And there's a lot of you know there's a strong need to tell a story that is actually grounded in substance. And everything that you say, literally every single sentence, is supposed to have a source backing it up in litigation. And so, if you can really help people make it quicker to tell a good story, and also help them figure out, well, what is the right story to tell? Because sometimes you sit down in litigation and you can be, I mean, this is maybe a similarity too, because I've had this experience with contracts where you're sort of like, I understand this deal. Okay, this is what they're going for. And you start crafting up the statement of work or whatever. And then you hear back, they're like, no, that was not what the actual, or that's not what we're trying to achieve. You totally like added all this burdensome stuff we don't need. And the same thing can sort of happen to you when you're writing a brief where you could be like, oh, this is my theory of the case. And you read all the transcripts, and you've done the depositions, and you sort of know what you're going to argue in your motion for summary judgment or whatever. And then you go back to find your sources, and you're like, oh, I misremembered it. Like, no, they didn't actually say that what I wanted them to say. Or
Yep.
okay, I've got to change my argument and I've got to find a case that can work with these weird facts that I now have. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's that same, the importance of like making sure the writing is capturing what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you've said something super interesting, and that is the difference between forward-looking and backwards-looking, I think. Litigators are very much about taking historical information and presenting a story from that, whereas
Yeah.
transactional lawyers is about taking intent and then building and crafting the future of what it could be. Um,
No, I think that's a good point. And I mean, I would say that, you know, the best litigators, even at trial, are also sort of thinking about the future because they're like,
mm,
okay, I'm going to lose at trial, but this is going to go on appeal. And so I need to lay the foundation so that the appellate lawyer can knock it out of the park. And so, yeah, it's kind of like you have to balance it all. But that
that's
is,
that's
yeah, there, when it comes
that's
like, um, yeah, and there is also the ability, similar to contracts, where you're like, okay, if I don't have what I need, I can reach out to the parties involved and get what I need so that
yep.
I can understand the story. At trial, you can do that. Not on appeal. On appeal, you're stuck with the past for sure. Yeah.
It's so interesting because um, if the best litigators are the ones who also have to build the path for the future, I think the best transactional lawyers are also the ones who have to look deep into the past because they're using the past deals and the marketness, if you like, to shape the negotiation, to shape how the contract's going to finally look. So it's interesting.
Definitely. And also the
Maybe,
case law. I'm sure there's like, there's a big litigation about something. You're like, see, I told you that was a risk, it happens.
although you never want to be on either side of that conversation as a transactional lawyer.
Yeah.
It's one of my greatest fears back when I was doing transactional work, where a litigator would ring me and go, "Can we have a conversation?" And I'm like, "Oh, maybe not. I'm very busy right now."
Yeah. No, it's fascinating when you're in-house as well, because then you can kind of see if you're there long enough, you can live to see the um the
The unfolding.
yeah, exactly, like what happens after you gave your legal advice and how it turned out, and
Yeah,
sort of down the road how it impacted other engagements. And that is something that I really did enjoy about being in-house. You get to
yeah,
really understand um yeah, the impact of the legal advice.
that's awesome. So to wrap up, tell us what is the most exciting thing on your roadmap for 2022?
Oh, I would say it's, we have some new features that we're going to be launching that were, honestly based on that feedback that we painstakingly got from our early users. Um, and just we're onboarding some of our larger kind of enterprise and government customers.
Mhm.
And so we're going to be really learning a lot about the most efficient way to teach, um, a tech product and onboard people. So that's yeah, because right now, I mean, we've had a lot of our early growth was with small firms, solo practitioners. And so we had a lot of opportunity for that one-on-one dialogue. And it's going to be interesting to see as we scale. I am super interested to learn about the best way to like, for example, to train and onboard a group. And when you're working with a solo practitioner, I might be just writing the whole brief myself, and I'm doing my table of authorities, and I'm site checking it, and I'm getting it filed. So many of the solo practitioners they don't have a legal assistant. They don't have anybody to help them. Or some might have one person, a paralegal or something like that. But when you start going to larger firms, it's really about writing a brief as a team sport. Like they're doing it as a team. And so, the associate is going to start with the draft. They're going to send it to the partner. That's going to go to the paralegal. It's going to go to the client for comments. It's going to go to three other partners for comments, back to the paralegal, back to the, it's going to go through a lot of different people who need to touch that document and review it. And each of them might use Clearbrief a little bit differently. So
Mhm.
we're trying to be really thoughtful about the training process.
That's super exciting, and I think you're going to do so well. And also, congratulations on being one of the top 3 at the ABA Tech Show.
Thank
Um,
you.
I heard about your musical talents from that show as well, so I look forward to hearing that in person one day.
Yeah, I mean, I am all about karaoke, so that's why one of the reasons I was really sad to miss legal week this year. I just couldn't,
Mm.
I couldn't swing 2 weeks of travel in a row because the
Yep,
tech show was last week. But
yep.
I know there was a special karaoke benefit concert arranged that I was like, oh, I wish I could go.
Oh,
So fun. Um,
next year, we might even be at the same show at the same time, so
I hope
fingers
so.
crossed.
Yeah, you got to tell me which ones you're going to. And
All of them. So until then, thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation. I really enjoyed learning more about Clearbrief and where you're taking it and all the exciting things you have planned for this year.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me.